During college break, I wanted to go to my childhood bedroom. "Don't go in there," my mom said. "It's just for storage now," my dad added. He looked nervous. Later that day, I went in anyway and saw this. 5 minutes later, I called 911. I didn't expect much. Just sleep, honestly. I came home with a headache and a half-dead phone, thinking about my old bed and the cheap lavender candle I left on the windowsill last summer. It was late. Not dramatic late, just dark and quiet. My parents opened the door like nothing was weird. My mom said hi. My dad joked about how heavy my suitcase was. I nodded, followed them in, and tried to remember how many hours of sleep I'd lost that week. Probably 10 too many. Everything seemed fine. That was the strange part. There was no tension, no arguing, no sideways looks, just a clean hallway and the faint smell of laundry detergent. I said, "I'm just going to drop my stuff in my room," without thinking. That's when my mom said, "Don't go in there." It was immediate, a little too fast. Then my dad added, "It's just for storage now." He looked nervous, not alarmed, just uncomfortable, like he didn't know what version of this conversation we were about to have. I froze a little, not because it was a big deal, just because it was weird. "It's only temporary," my mom said, like she was smoothing it over. "You'll stay in the guest room this time." They moved on quickly. I didn't. My old room, the only space in that house that ever felt mine, was off limits, blocked. Just like that. No warning. They didn't explain. I didn't ask. I followed them to the guest room like it didn't matter, even though it did. The guest room was mostly a folded-up couch and a weird smell that hadn't been there before. There was a blanket, but no pillow, no lamp, no closet. I sat down, and the springs pushed back harder than I expected. "This okay?" my mom asked. "Yeah," I said. It wasn't. The rest of the evening passed quietly. We had dinner. No one said much. They asked about school. I answered. My dad talked about gas prices. My mom laughed at something, but I can't remember what. It was like we were all reading from a script no one cared about anymore. I went to bed early, or at least I tried. I stared at the ceiling. The room was cold. My back hurt. There was a weird noise in the wall. Maybe pipes, maybe something alive. I kept thinking about the door, why it was blocked, what could possibly be inside. And I know, it sounds small, but it didn't feel small. It felt wrong. I got up sometime after midnight. I didn't check the clock, just needed to see it, needed to know. The hallway was dark, quiet. I walked slowly, like I was afraid of waking someone, or maybe of what I'd find. The boxes were gone, the ones that were stacked in front of my door earlier. They were just gone. I stood there, staring. Then I tried the handle. It was locked. My room never had a lock. Not growing up. Not ever. Not even when I begged for one in high school. I stood there longer than I should have. Then I remembered the hiding spot. Back hallway, behind the laundry shelf. That's where they always kept the spare keys. I went there, reached behind the panel, and sure enough, there was a key. New, shiny, taped in the usual spot. I don't know what I expected. Maybe that it wouldn't be there. Maybe that I'd chicken out. I didn't. Back at the door, I slid the key in, turned it. It clicked open. I took a breath. Then I opened the door. It smelled different, like dust and something else, like the air hadn't moved in weeks. I stepped inside. I saw what was in there, and I stopped. Everything in my body stopped. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't some random storage box or old furniture or a pile of winter coats. It was exactly what I didn't want it to be. 5 minutes later, I was outside, calling 911. I didn't knock on their door. I didn't tell them I knew. I just waited for the police to show up. I didn't look back. Not yet. I didn't always know something was off. That's the dangerous part about certain families. They don't scream at you or lock you in a basement. They make pasta. They smile. They ask about school. They make it easy to convince yourself that the knot in your chest is your fault. Growing up, I would have said things were fine. Good even. I was the younger sister. Vivian was the older one, and the rules were pretty simple. She got to go first and I got to watch. Vivian had the louder voice, the better grades, the shinier hair. She wore blazers to school dances and pulled them off. She knew what she wanted from a young age. Journalism, probably travel, maybe a master's someday, and everyone around her just nodded and opened doors. I didn't mind mostly. I played music, kept my head down, learned how to disappear in plain sight. But even then, I noticed things. How Mom always made Vivian's favorite dessert, but forgot mine. How Dad would interrupt me mid-sentence to ask Vivian if she needed more water. How, when I once said, "I feel like she's your favorite," they both laughed like I'd just said something adorable and stupid. "You're imagining it," Mom said. "You're being dramatic," Dad added. I learned not to say it out loud again. It got clearer in college. Vivian had most of her tuition covered by Mom and Dad. Not all of it, but enough that she could intern over summers instead of working retail. I asked once if they could help me too, just a little, maybe a textbook or two, and Mom said, "We wish we could, sweetie," in a voice that made me feel like I'd asked for a Tesla. So I worked. Cafes, admin assistant gigs, a tutoring job I hated. Vivian, meanwhile, studied abroad in Florence and said it deepened her understanding of narrative. I deepened my understanding of overdraft fees. Now she's finishing her degree. She says she wants to take a year off before grad school to travel, decompress, see the world. She talks about it constantly like it's her life's work. Thailand, Morocco, the Galapagos. She says it'll make her a better writer. Maybe it will. What gets me is how excited my parents are. Like glowing. Full-on will make it happen energy. They've already started talking logistics, money, flights. I overheard them saying maybe Grandma could help. That part made me stop walking. Not help Vivian exactly. Just that when Grandma passes, they expect to use part of the inheritance to fund the trip. You know, since the money would be staying in the family. Grandma's 89. Still sharp. Still herself. Still alive. It was the when that got me. Like her death was just a pending transaction. What they don't get, what I haven't told them, and maybe never will, is that I'm not jealous of Vivian's plane tickets. I'm angry because of Grandma. Because we have something. A thing that no one else in the family even pretends to understand. Music. She played cello and piano, taught me both before I could reach the pedals. Her hands used to move like water. Mine tried to keep up. When I was 10, she let me sit beside her while she opened a locked cabinet I wasn't supposed to know about. Inside were instruments I didn't have names for. Violas with inlays, flutes with carved keys, a mandolin that looked like it belonged in a museum. She told me they'd been passed down, kept, never sold, played, but always with care. Years later, when I was home for a weekend, she told me they were meant for me. She didn't say it like it was a gift. She said it like it was a continuation, like she was handing over a language. I didn't tell anyone, not because it was secret, because it was sacred. But they found out, and they were pissed. I heard Dad first, late one night. "It's not fair to give it all to Rami." Mom agreed, said it should be split evenly, that those kinds of things belong to the whole family. They meant Vivian. Vivian, who doesn't play. Vivian, who once asked if the oboe was the goose-sounding one. I wanted to scream, but Grandma didn't back down. She said clearly that they weren't for sale, that she wasn't dead, that she had the right to decide what happened to her things. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. Then the break-in happened. Grandma was in the hospital overnight. A small issue, they said, just a precaution. She came back the next day to find her back window smashed and the collection gone. All of it. She called me crying. I had never heard her cry before. Not at funerals, not when Grandpa died, not when she lost her best friend to cancer. But this broke her. "They're gone," she kept saying. "I thought I'd have time to show you." I tried to calm her down. I told her maybe the insurance would help. She said, "It's not about the money." I knew that. Of course I knew that. She got sick again 2 days later, hospitalized again, weaker this time. The doctors said stress was making it worse. I stayed with her, took time off, sat next to her bed while she slept in half-hour stretches. It wasn't the theft. It was what it took from her. The idea that something that had lasted generations had ended under her roof. I've never hated anyone more than I hated whoever did that. And then I found out who it was, because I opened that door. I walked into the room I wasn't supposed to walk into, and there they were. The cases, the instruments, all of them, lined up under a tarp, hidden in my childhood bedroom like some kind of cursed treasure. They were never stolen. They were moved. 5 minutes later, I was outside, breathing too fast, calling 911. The dispatcher said someone would be there soon. I wasn't sure what soon meant when it was past midnight on a quiet street where nothing ever happened, but I stayed outside anyway. Not because I wanted to be brave or dramatic, just because I couldn't go back in. I didn't want to see the kitchen, or the hallway, or my parents asleep in their bed while Grandma was still hooked up to monitors because of what they did. I stood near the mailbox, my jacket only halfway zipped. I kept touching my phone like it would make time move faster. Every few minutes I looked at the house. All the lights were still off except for the porch. It looked normal from the outside. Everything did. Which was kind of the point, wasn't it? The patrol car pulled up 28 minutes later. I counted. No lights, no sirens, just a quiet engine and the crunch of tires against the curb. 2 officers got out, one older, one younger. Neither of them looked surprised to find me standing outside in the cold, holding my phone like it was the only thing keeping me upright. "You the caller?" the older one asked. I nodded. They didn't ask why I was outside, just listened while I told them, calmly and clearly, what I'd found. The instruments, my childhood room, the break-in that wasn't. I told them about Grandma, the hospital, the insurance claim. I told them the whole story in a voice that didn't sound like mine. They asked if I wanted to stay anonymous. I shook my head. "I don't care anymore." They nodded like they'd seen that before. Maybe they had. One of them stayed with me. The other walked up to the house and rang the bell. It took a minute. Then I saw lights flick on, one by one. Upstairs first, then the hallway, then the front entry. My dad opened the door in sweatpants and a t-shirt. His hair was sticking up on one side. He looked confused, not panicked, not guilty, just tired and confused. My mom appeared behind him, pulling on a sweater. She looked even more confused than he did. I couldn't hear what was being said. The officer kept his voice low. I watched from the sidewalk, not hiding, just staying out of the way. It felt strange to watch them from that distance, like they were strangers in someone else's house. Eventually, both officers went inside. The door closed behind them. I stood there, arms folded, trying to stay warm. My feet were starting to ache from the cold. My hands had gone numb a while ago. I kept my eyes on the house. I didn't know what was happening inside. Didn't want to guess. Part of me expected yelling, footsteps, slammed doors, but it stayed quiet. Just shifting shadows behind the curtains, the occasional silhouette. Then nothing for a while. I thought about Grandma, what this would have done to her if she'd known, what it already had. 20 minutes later, a second vehicle pulled up. This one was different, larger, with an empty cargo area and protective lining inside. They were there for the instruments, the evidence. 2 more officers got out. They spoke briefly to the first pair, then disappeared inside. A few minutes later, they started bringing the cases out. They moved carefully, like they knew what they were carrying, like someone had told them the value wasn't just in numbers. I didn't move, just watched. The violin, the cello, the mandolin. Each one of them carried like it meant something. And then the front door opened again. My mom stepped out, scanning the yard. She looked right past me at first, then froze. Her eyes locked on mine. No words, no expression shift. Just that cold, silent recognition. Then my dad stepped out behind her. They both stared. They didn't say a word. They didn't need to. I saw it in their eyes, what I'd done, what they thought I was now. Betrayer, backstabber, stranger. I didn't break eye contact. I just let it sit. Eventually, one of the officers walked back over. "Everything's been cataloged," he said. "We're just finishing the report." I nodded. "My bag's still inside," I said. "I don't want to go in alone." "Of course." He walked with me. Inside, everything was quiet. The guest room hadn't changed. My bag was already packed. I grabbed it, didn't look around. My parents stood in the hallway watching. Still nothing from them. Not a word. I didn't look at them when I walked out. Didn't need to. Outside, the last instrument case was being loaded. The second vehicle's door shut. Papers signed. One final clipboard pass between officers. Then it was over. "Do you have somewhere to go?" one of them asked. I shook my head. "Can you take me to the hospital?" I asked. He nodded. I got in the back seat, closed the door behind me. We pulled away in silence. I didn't turn around. Didn't have to. They dropped me off at the hospital just after 6. I had my bag with me. No plan, though. I just walked in and asked what floor she was on. Grandma was still in her room, still alive, still hooked up to too many things, but awake. She looked up when I came in and smiled like nothing had happened. I sat next to her bed, took her hand, said, "They found the instruments." She closed her eyes and breathed out. "Thank God," she said. I didn't tell her who took them. I didn't say where they were, just that they were safe. That was enough. She squeezed my fingers. "I wanted you to have them," she said. "That was the whole point." "I know." She rested her head back, said nothing else. A nurse came in after a while, checked vitals, smiled. "If she stays calm," she said, "she'll recover." I stepped outside around 7:30. My phone was already buzzing. 47 missed calls, more texts, more voicemails. Mom, Dad, Vivian, repeat. While I was staring at the screen, it lit up again. It was Mom. I answered. Her voice came in loud and fast. "How could you do this to us?" I didn't respond. "You called the police. You humiliated your own parents. You've ruined everything. You hid the collection," I said. "You told Grandma it was gone. You filed a false claim." "She's fine," Dad cut in. "She didn't die. She could have." There was silence on the line. Then Mom again. "We are your family. You don't do this to your family. You don't do that to Grandma. You've always been ungrateful," she said, voice shaking. "Always twisting everything, making yourself the victim." "I'm not the victim. She is." "You're not our daughter anymore," she said. I stayed quiet. Then Dad muttered something low. "She's old anyway." It slipped out. I don't think he meant to say it out loud. I felt something shut off in my chest. "You were counting on her dying," I said. That's what this was. Neither of them denied it. I hung up, blocked both numbers. Vivian called 10 minutes later. I almost didn't answer, but I did. Her tone was different, like she was trying to sound calm and failed. "I heard what you did," she said. "I did what was right. You called the cops on your own parents. They committed insurance fraud. They almost killed Grandma." "Oh, come on," she said. "It wasn't like that." It was exactly like that. We just needed the money. It's not like anyone was hurt. Grandma was hurt. She's old. There it was again. "You're really going to throw away the whole family over this?" she asked. I didn't say anything. "Romy, you've always been dramatic. You act like the world's out to get you, but..." I ended the call. Blocked her too. I sat down on a bench outside the hospital. No family, no more noise. Just air. I didn't cry. I didn't collapse. I didn't feel free or brave or strong. I felt done. They made their choices, and I made mine. It's been 6 months. I haven't heard a word from them, and I haven't sent one either. The last update came from my cousin. Quiet voice. Quick text. "They pled guilty. Sentenced today. 1 year of house arrest, 400 hours of community service, felony convictions. Both of them. They wear ankle monitors now. Can't leave the house unless it's for trash pickup or food bank shifts. It's public. Everyone knows. They walk past neighbors who used to wave and now cross the street. No one visits. They're not invited anywhere. They stood in court and read an apology, not to Grandma, she wasn't there, but to the room, the judge, the record. No family showed up. Not even Vivian. She vanished online for a while, then came back pretending it never happened. A new profile picture. Some quote about inner peace. Comments turned off. Like if she controlled the narrative hard enough, the truth might forget her name. Grad school? Postponed. The big trip? Never happened. Last I heard, she's back at home. Not working, not posting, not planning much of anything. And me? I'm not watching. I'm done. Grandma turned 90 last week. She's home. She's healthy. She's sharper than half the people I know in their 30s. We threw her a birthday party, small but full. Her closest friends came, the ones who never stopped calling even when she was sick. A few of her old music students showed up too. Some of them brought their kids. I guess they wanted those kids to meet the woman who taught them to play like the music meant something. She wore her good cardigan, the one with the pearl buttons, and laughed the whole afternoon. Not polite laughing, real laughing. I hadn't heard it like that in years. The instruments were there too. They're hers again, out of hiding. No longer evidence in a locked-up case file. We set them up in the corner of the room, more for presence than performance. I figured no one would touch them. But around 5 o'clock, when the light shifted just right through the curtains, Grandma stood up from her chair and walked across the room. She didn't ask. She didn't wait. She sat down at the piano like the keys had been calling her. Everyone went quiet. And then she played. Not a full piece. Just enough to make your chest tighten and your throat do that thing it does when you're trying not to cry in public. She played like she was still 60, like the last year hadn't taken anything from her. Afterward, one of her friends said, "90 looks good on you." Grandma smiled and said, "Might have another decade in me if no one tries to kill me again." The whole room laughed. But I didn't, because I believed her. She's 90, and she's still here, still playing, still sharp. Some people think age is permission to stop seeing someone, that once you hit a number, you become optional, easy to write off. But no one gets to decide how long someone has left just because it's more convenient for them. Grandma might live to 95, or 100, or 105. I'm not counting. I'm just showing up. She doesn't talk about my parents anymore, or Vivian. Neither do I. The instruments are back, the music is back, and that's enough. Did I go too far, or not far enough? Comment your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe. At my parents' anniversary dinner, my sister gave a toast thanking them for raising an only child. My mom raised her glass. My dad smiled, so I stood up and made an announcement that left everyone speechless. I didn't go there planning to cause a scene. If anything, I went there to finally make peace, to prove once and for all that I could be the bigger person. The venue was exactly what you'd expect from a couple that once argued about whether their dog should have a middle name. Elegant, polished, a bit too beige. The type of restaurant where the waiters all speak in hushed tones, and you don't so much eat the food as admire it from a respectful distance. I arrived 3 minutes early and still felt late. My sister was already there, of course. Hair perfect, makeup flawless, commanding the room with the kind of grace usually reserved for political candidates or cult leaders. She greeted me with an air kiss and that breathy, condescending tone she saves for holidays and public events. "You made it," she said, like she'd just spotted an old co-worker at a bus stop. I smiled back with all the warmth of a paper cut. My mother offered a polite hug. My dad gave me a nod, the kind of nod you give your dentist in the grocery store. I was seated at the far end of the table, naturally, next to a ficus and across from my cousin's new boyfriend, who introduced himself twice and still got my name wrong. But I didn't complain. I didn't roll my eyes or check my watch or make a scene. I told myself I was here for a reason, that maybe, if I gave them this one gesture, things would be different, better, or at the very least civil. I had brought something meaningful, something generous, something I'd been planning quietly for months. The envelope was still in my bag, the corners already soft from being handled too many times. It wasn't just money, it was a gesture, a way of saying, despite everything, I still want this to work. Dinner started. Small talk buzzed like a fluorescent light. My sister talked about a conference she'd spoken at. My parents listened like she just read the Constitution from memory. When I mentioned that I'd launched a new freelance project, my mother blinked and said, "That's nice. Do you get benefits with that?" By the time the soup arrived, I had answered a total of 2 questions, neither of them about me. Then came the toast. My sister stood, glass in hand, smile poised. "I just want to thank everyone for being here to celebrate the 2 people who raised me to be the woman I am today." There was applause. I clapped too, like a well-trained seal. "And I especially want to thank them," she continued, turning to our parents with that same practiced warmth, "for raising the most incredible only child anyone could ask for." And there it was. I waited 1 beat. I thought maybe someone would laugh. Maybe my mom would look horrified and say, "Oh my God, don't forget your sister." Maybe my dad would clear his throat awkwardly. Anything. But no, my mother raised her glass. My father smiled like he was posing for a Christmas card. Not even a glance in my direction. I could have burst into flames, and the only reaction I'd get is someone asking the waiter to refill the water. That's when the sound in my ears went quiet. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just a dull stillness, like I'd finally accepted a joke everyone else had been laughing at for years. I stood up before I even realized I was moving. I reached into my bag, pulled out the envelope, and walked calmly to the center of the room. No glass clinking, no preamble, just my voice, even and steady. "I had something prepared to give to the people who raised me," I said. "But I think there's been a misunderstanding." There was a ripple of confusion. Heads turned. My sister's face went slack. My mother's lips parted slightly, like she wanted to say something but couldn't quite find the tone that would make it charming. I turned toward the table in the back where my aunt and uncle were seated like second-string relatives who got the invite out of pity. They looked stunned. My aunt's hand fluttered to her chest. My uncle looked like he wasn't sure whether to stand or sink through the floor. I handed the envelope to them directly. No theatrics, no speeches, just a simple, "This is for you." Then I sat back down. For a long moment, no one said anything. No forks clinked. No chairs shifted. It was the silence of a bomb that hadn't quite finished going off. My sister blinked like she was trying to reboot her brain. My mom tilted her head in that way she does when she's trying to convince herself she didn't just witness something deeply inconvenient. My dad's face was unreadable, but his jaw was clenched, and my aunt was staring at the envelope like it was ticking. I didn't say another word, and no one asked. The rest of the dinner passed in that strange, suffocating quiet, like the moment had sucked the air out of the room and no one was quite sure how to breathe again. But I breathed for the first time all night. I actually breathed because I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for validation, not for permission, not to be seen. They'd raised an only child after all. So I gave what I had to someone who actually saw me. They say that when someone shows you who they are, you should believe them. I used to think that was just a quote people slapped on Pinterest boards between photos of minimalist living rooms and avocado toast. But maybe Maya Angelou knew something I didn't. Because my parents, they've been showing me who they are since I was old enough to understand what a golden child was. And more importantly, that I wasn't it. The signs were always there, subtle at first. Like the way my sister's macaroni art made it to the fridge while mine was quietly repurposed as a grocery list, or the way my parents clapped when she sang off-key in a school play but said nothing when I won a regional writing competition. I brought home a little trophy once. I still remember the way my dad glanced at it, then said, "You know, spelling bees don't count as sports." When I turned 8, I asked for a bike. My sister got a pink one with streamers, a matching helmet and training wheels just in case. I got a long lecture about how I should be happy with hand-me-downs. The hand-me-down was from a neighbor's kid. It still had mud on it. And yet, I kept trying. I thought maybe if I was quieter, easier, more helpful. Maybe that would earn me a little space. So I babysat, cleaned the kitchen without being asked, and brought home good grades, straight mostly. My mom called them bare minimums. When my sister got an A+ in history, there was cake. When I graduated high school, my parents forgot to book the restaurant they promised. We ended up eating at a fast food place because, as my dad put it, the fries are better. Anyway, my sister's graduation. They rented a private hall. There was a slideshow, speeches, even party favors with her name on them. You'd think she was giving a TED Talk, not picking up a diploma. But I didn't crack. I told myself I didn't need all that I wasn't that kind of person, that I was fine keeping my head down. I didn't realize that what I was actually doing was shrinking, silently, daily, and with practice. My aunt and uncle saw it first. They were never loud about it. They didn't swoop in and declare themselves my saviors. But they were there in all the small, quiet ways that matter. They used to babysit me when my parents wanted a break. I think I was 5 the first time they picked me up. My mom handed me off like I was a Tupperware container she'd grown tired of. "She's picky about food," she said, "and don't let her stay up too late." They didn't treat me like an inconvenience. They made popcorn and let me watch movies I picked. When I got scared during the never-ending story, my aunt held my hand and said, "He's just pretending to be scary, sweetheart." That was the first time anyone explained fear to me in a way that made sense. I spilled orange juice on their white carpet once and burst into tears. I'd been yelled at for less at home, but my aunt just brought me a towel and said, "It's just a carpet." You're worth more than that. When I was sick in college and couldn't afford cold medicine, my uncle drove 2 hours with soup and cough drops. My dad sent a thumbs up emoji. No words, just the emoji. My mom suggested I try herbal tea. When I got my first job and was scared I wouldn't make it, my aunt emailed me every day for a week. Just little things. "You've got this." They're lucky to have you. Proud of you already. Meanwhile, my parents asked if it came with dental. They showed up for birthdays, for emergencies, for everything in between. When I got out of a toxic relationship and had nowhere to go, they cleared the guest room without hesitation. My mom said I should have tried harder to make it work. When I landed my dream freelance client, I told them first, not because I didn't want to tell my parents, but because by then I knew how the conversation would go, and I was tired of shrinking. I tried once, just once, to explain all of this to my mom. I told her how much it had hurt growing up in the shadow of someone who never seemed to have to try. She laughed and said, "You've always been so sensitive." "That's your problem." Then she added, "At least we didn't spoil you." And she was right. They didn't. But my aunt and uncle, they didn't spoil me either. They just saw me, listened to me, gave me room to exist without performing. And in this family, that was radical. There was a moment just a few weeks before the anniversary dinner when I sat at their kitchen table drinking coffee and realized I was more at home there than I'd ever been in the house I grew up in. My uncle was telling some silly story about setting off the smoke alarm while trying to make pancakes. My aunt rolled her eyes but couldn't stop smiling. They had that ease about them, the kind that comes from loving people without needing to fix them. "I used to wish I was theirs," I said, half laughing, half not. My aunt looked at me over her mug and said, "You are." That moment lived rent-free in my chest as I walked into the anniversary dinner. I didn't plan to say anything. Didn't plan to do anything. I had the envelope in my bag, yes, but in my head it was still going to my parents. Some small part of me still clung to the hope that they might surprise me. But instead, they erased me neatly, publicly. And for the first time, I let myself believe what had always been true. I wasn't invisible because I'd failed to shine. I was invisible because they refused to look. So I looked somewhere else, and I found what I'd been looking for all along. The envelope was still unopened. I knew because the next morning I got a text from my aunt. Just a single question mark. No words, no emojis, just that small curl of confusion that somehow said everything. I waited an hour before I called. They picked up on speaker. I could hear my aunt breathing before she spoke. "We haven't opened it." I smiled even though no one could see me. "You can." My uncle cleared his throat. "Are you sure?" We don't want to overstep." "You're not," I said. I leaned back on my sofa and stared at the ceiling. "You never have." They opened it together. I heard the paper rustle. Then nothing. Not a gasp, not a word, just silence that somehow made my chest feel lighter. I had transferred $50,000 into a joint account in their names. No catch, no strings, no legal acrobatics. Just a quiet act of repayment for all the little kindnesses they never asked to be paid back for. My aunt finally whispered, "No, no, 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 sweetheart. This can't be right." "It is. You were giving this to them, weren't you?" "I was." More silence. And then something broke open. Not loudly, not like a dam bursting. More like a single pane of glass cracking under years of pressure. My aunt's voice trembled. "We didn't do anything to earn this." "You didn't have to," I said. "You showed up. You loved me. You saw me. That was enough." My uncle spoke next, quiet and reverent. "You have no idea what this means." "I do," I said. "That's why I did it. I thought that would be the end of it. A clean break. A single declaration punctuated by peace. But of course, that's not how my family operates. Because 5 hours later, my phone blew up. The first call was from my mother. I didn't pick up. The second came with a voicemail. I played it on speaker while I folded laundry. "You made your point. If this is some kind of stunt, it wasn't funny. Call me back." The third call came from my sister. That one I definitely didn't answer. Then came the text. "Sister, was that real? Like the money? You were actually going to give them that much? Why them? They didn't even raise you. You're being dramatic. You humiliated us." I didn't respond. Mostly because I was too busy laughing. The kind of laugh you only let out when something ridiculous finally folds under the weight of its own absurdity. By that evening, my dad had gotten involved. He doesn't usually text. He considers full sentences of femininity and emojis leftist propaganda, but I guess the situation called for a break in protocol. "Dad, we need to talk face to face, not like this." Which in dad speak translates roughly to, "I don't know how to spin this yet, but give me time." What followed was what I call the regroup phase. My parents closed ranks, spun the story, tried to contain the spread. I got messages from 2 cousins I hadn't heard from in years. Cousin 1, "Hey, I heard there was drama at the dinner. You okay?" Cousin 2, "Oof. What did you say to Aunt Lorna? Mom's freaking out." Aunt Lorna, of course. See, my parents didn't just stew quietly. They activated the family network like a political campaign. Suddenly, I was the unstable one, the emotional daughter, the attention seeker. But I didn't bite. I didn't explain. I didn't send my own version of events to the group chat. I just let them twist in their own silence. Then came the unannounced visit. It was mid-afternoon, 2 days after the dinner. I opened the door and there they were, my parents. My mother in her pressed blouse and pearl earrings. My father standing like he was about to ask me to step outside and look at his grill setup. I didn't say anything. I just leaned on the doorframe. "We'd like to come in," my mother said. "No." She blinked. My dad looked past me into the living room like I was hiding state secrets in the couch cushions. "You don't want to talk this through?" he asked. "You didn't seem interested in talking when you raised your glasses to your only child." My mother exhaled sharply. It was a joke. No one laughed. We didn't mean it like that. Didn't you? I crossed my arms. You had all night. You didn't say a word. He straightened. You blindsided us. That's rich coming from the people who cut me out with a smile. Dad spoke again. $50,000. That's not a joke. You were going to give that to us. I was, I said. And you gave it to them instead. I didn't answer, because we both knew. That money, my mom said, voice tightening, could have helped us retire early, pay off the car, your father's medical bills. I know, I said. That's why I saved it. He stared at me, unblinking. So, what changed? I smiled. Not kindly. You toasted to your only child. She looked away. My dad clenched his jaw. So, this is revenge. No, I said. This is recognition. I gave my thanks to the people who earned it. You're throwing away your family. I'm finally choosing one. They left after that. Not with a slam, but with a quiet door click that felt heavier than it should have. I thought it might stop there, but then my sister joined the offensive. She posted some vague, emotionally manipulative thing online. A photo of my parents' wedding photo captioned, "Some people only show up when they want applause." Real family shows up quietly. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The next day, I got a call from my aunt. We've been getting messages, she said, sounding embarrassed. From your mom and your sister? I figured they're trying to guilt us, saying we manipulated you. You didn't. I know. I hate this. We didn't want to be in the middle. You're not, I said. You're where you've always been. Beside me. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then, we're not going to cash it. The money. You are. We don't need it. I know. We can't accept it. Yes, you can, I said. Because I need you to. Because I can't go back in time and make things fair. But I can do this. I can say thank you properly. She sniffled. You're going to make me cry. Good. I was starting to feel like I was the only one. That night, I sat on my porch with a glass of wine and looked at the stars. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel smug. I felt like something in me had been put back into place. The fallout wasn't over, but I wasn't afraid of it, because when the dust settled, they'd still be there. My aunt and uncle, the people who never asked for proof, who never needed a performance, who knew who I was even when I was still trying to figure it out. And now they knew what they meant to me. Finally, I thought the silence would be the end of it. You know that moment after a storm when everything's eerily still and you convince yourself it's over? That was me, sitting in the quiet, thinking maybe, just maybe, they'd let it go. That maybe my parents would take the loss and retreat into their own cold little bubble. But that's not how people like them operate. The quiet was never peace. It was a setup. It started with a phone call from my cousin Theo, of all people. We hadn't spoken in years. He was the kind of relative who didn't bother remembering birthdays unless it showed up in his Facebook notifications. So when I saw his name pop up, I didn't pick up. He left a voicemail. Hey, just wanted to give you a heads up. Your mom's been saying some things about you, about the money. You might want to check your socials. I don't use Facebook much anymore, but I logged in and there was a long, meandering post on my mother's page with just enough vagueness to give her deniability, but all the usual trademarks, spiritual quotes, passive-aggressive scripture, and just enough weaponized humility to make it look like she was the one bleeding. She never said my name, but she didn't have to. It breaks a parent's heart when their child is led astray by people pretending to love them. Family isn't about money. It's about loyalty. We did our best and now we're being punished for it. Sometimes evil wears a smile. Beneath that, the comments piled up. Church friends, old neighbors, acquaintances with too much time and too little information. Praying for your family. You don't deserve this. You raised your daughters right. And my favorite, people forget who carried them when they were helpless. One day they'll regret it. I almost laughed. Almost. But my hands were shaking too hard. Then came the real blow. My aunt called me, shaken. She had gotten an anonymous email. No subject line, just screenshots of old text messages I'd sent years ago. Ones I'd sent in moments of frustration, complaining about them, venting, being messy, saying things like, I wish they'd stop hovering, and sometimes I just want space. Things I never meant as betrayal, just as noise, the kind you let out when you're human and tired and raw. The sender? My sister. She didn't sign it, of course, but she left enough breadcrumbs that it wasn't hard to figure out. I know you didn't mean it, my aunt said, but it hurt to see. And I believed her. Not because she was guilt-tripping me, but because she was honest. Because she told the truth even when it was uncomfortable, unlike the rest of them. So I drove over. I sat at their kitchen table with a box of pastries and a pit in my stomach. I'm sorry, I said, for everything I said, for anything that made you question what you mean to me. My aunt didn't make a speech. She just reached out and held my hand. My uncle poured coffee. No grand gesture, no dramatic hug, just presence. This love, the kind that doesn't need defending. That's when I knew it was time to stop trying to fix what never worked, to stop patching holes in a ship that was never seaworthy, to finally stop calling it family just because we shared blood. So I wrote a letter, not an angry one, not a tantrum, just facts, a list of boundaries, a quiet line in the sand. Please do not contact me again. Do not attempt to communicate through other family members. Do not spin stories and do not expect reconciliation. I wish you peace, but I'm done playing the role you wrote for me. I sent it, printed and mailed, just so there could be no claim of I didn't see it. A week later, my mom called from a different number. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. It started tearfully, ended bitterly. You've ruined this family. You've broken your father's heart. Are you proud of yourself? I thought, I am. They didn't stop. They tried to guilt my aunt and uncle into returning the money, sent formal letters, suggested they were being manipulated, claimed I was mentally unstable. It got so bad my uncle went to a lawyer just to make sure they were protected. I offered to pay. He refused. We don't take from family, he said, but we'll accept gifts. That winter, I spent the holidays with them. Just the three of us. No pressure, no performance. We cooked together, played cards, watched old movies in pajamas, and laughed about nothing. My aunt gave me a scarf she knitted herself. My uncle made hot chocolate and burned it a little, and we drank it anyway. It was the best Christmas I'd ever had. At one point, my aunt looked at me and said, "Do you regret it?" I didn't even have to think. No, because I didn't just walk away from a family. I walked toward one. I stopped waiting to be seen and chose to go where I was already known. The calls stopped eventually. The noise faded. They moved on to new narratives, new people to perform for. I didn't. I stayed here in this small, quiet life where love is not a transaction and kindness doesn't need to be earned. Sometimes I still think about that dinner, about the look on my sister's face when I handed the envelope to someone else, about my mom's frozen expression, my dad's clenched jaw. It used to haunt me. Now it reminds me of the night I stopped apologizing for existing, the night I finally said enough and meant it. Sometimes I wonder if I did the right thing, Not the part about giving the money to my aunt and uncle that still feels right in my bones, but the moment itself, the announcement, making it public, letting them sit in the silence they created. Part of me still wonders, was that too far? Or maybe not far enough? I didn't do it to humiliate anyone. I did it because I couldn't keep pretending anymore. But I still lie awake some nights, asking myself, should I have waited, handed it over in private? Would that have softened the blow, or just made it easier for them to rewrite the story? So what do you think? Did I do the right thing? Was I justified? Or was there a better way to walk away? Let me know in the comments. I'd really love to hear what you'd have done in my shoes. And if you want more true feeling stories like this, about family choices and standing your ground, make sure to hit subscribe.